If you want to know what it takes to be an absolutely incredible leader in the luxury retail space, then you must watch today's podcast, where I'm joined by Claire Hugill, co-founder of Atelier Consultancy. Join me on this episode where she talks about her tremendous career and how she has built herself through strength and resilience. I really am excited about this particular episode and I hope you enjoy it. What I'm actually so excited about, Claire, and welcome, hello.
Thank you.
Is that I've always followed you and I've always known of you and known of what a fantastic career you've had. But I've never had the opportunity, as I have had with so many of my other podcast guests, to actually sit with you in a social setting and know everything pretty much before sitting and actually formally interviewing you. So I feel like this is a real privilege because this is an opportunity for me to have a glass of wine with you and talk through what has been a phenomenal journey in our luxury retail world. So thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
And I'm so excited to hear all of this. So let's kick it off. Where did this all start? Why retail? And you obviously work for Selfridges, Harrods, for all the big players. What was the first initial reason why you chose luxury retail?
Well, everyone's always quite surprised by this, but actually it was a mistake. I fell into it by mistake. But it was from my passion for fashion and my love of fashion. So always loved the fashion industry, always loved fashion, always on my own sense of style. And when I left school, I studied fashion and I love the kind of creative side of designing and I love the commercial side too. But actually, when it came to creating a garment, I wasn't that interested. And when it came to choose my degree, you know, I went to interviews at St Martin's and London College of Fashion, and something in my intuition, I still to this day don't know what it was, but I actually was just like, a degree maybe isn't for me. And I stopped the process and I applied for various roles. And I remember on the same day, I got a sales associate role in Harrods and Selfridges. Selfridges at the time was run by Vittorio Radici. It was like the cool department store. And I chose Selfridges. So I remember vividly going around Selfridges telling everyone I'm just here on a break while I sort my fashion career out and my pathway. And 5 years later, there I was. Within 6 months, I was promoted to a team leader. And I was probably 18, 19 at the time. And that's where it really all started. When I was at fashion college, I was super inspired by a relatively, at the time, unknown designer called Alexander McQueen. And obviously had an amazing moment many years later when I had a 360 of becoming their head of retail for EMEA. So, Lee, I did my dissertation on Lee and Matthew Williamson at the time. Vivienne Westwood was a huge inspiration for me. Sandra Rhodes went to the same college I did. So, you know, that's it. I caught the bug when I was in Selfridges. I just found out I loved it. And then I worked out, actually, I was pretty good at it as well. That's how it all started.
So any particular part of that early career do you feel was a key to sort of driving your leadership going forward?
I think I was very lucky to be in one of the world's biggest department stores, coolest department stores, you know, incredible, inspiring leaders at the time. And I got promoted like at nearly every year. It kind of was and I took a position to be, to head up the personal shopping team. And it was probably the first time I took on a more experienced and complex team. But also it became the time that I really understood the customer because I was exposed to, you know, British royalty. You know, I used to take the future King of England around the store when he was like 18.
Wow.
And but also celebrity. I used to show them the best of Selfridges had to offer. And I was pretty young at the time and I had a very experienced personal shopping team. And that for me really kind of cemented the fact of I had to buckle down, had to really get into leadership of the team. They weren't just going to go, oh yeah, this is what we need. It was really a challenging team, but incredibly talented at the same time. And also being at the forefront of the customer, you had to balance the two quite quickly. And I was exposed to a lot during, I probably did personal shopping for about 2 years before I then took on the whole of accessories and jewellery at Selfridges, which was, a bigger commercial kind of experience. And with that experience, I got exposed to so many kind of big players in terms of Gucci and Prada and Dior. I was working with all of those teams because it was a very heavily concession business. So I learned so much very, very quickly, and I'm always very grateful for that. I have to say, I believe you learn on the job, and I was exposed to a lot.
So talk about being thrown into the deep end. I mean, you absolutely were, and you seem to have done so much so young, but I guess my next question is, working in a high-pressured environment like that and managing so many different areas and multiple divisions must have been really intense for you at a young age.
Really intense, but I always say, do it while you're young, because you don't know what you don't know.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I did the same thing.
I don't think I do half of what I did then now. Honestly, I just presumed this is how everybody's retail career was.
I mean, this isn't a question that I've prepared for you, but something that I think people will want to hear, especially because people talk very often now about working in department store rather than boutique. Would you choose that again? Would you choose that as your first experience again if you had the choice to go back in time?
Yes, absolutely. But that's because I was very strategic and I was very driven. I wanted to be promoted every year. I was super driven, super clear on the path I was going. So I knew the reason I left Selfridges, I was super happy at Selfridges. I didn't want to leave after 5 years. And actually I then went to Harrods for another 8 years. So again, in the department store world, but I knew then I had to leave because I had to experience a mono brand, working for a singular brand. I was very clear and I knew to get to where I needed to be. So I don't actually think it matters which way round you do it, as long as you experience both worlds.
So after 5 years it was that you finished at Selfridges, you then went to Harrods. You just mentioned that it was to mono brand. So where was that then next?
After Harrods, it was Alexander McQueen.
No, at Harrods. So you were managing multi-brand again in Harrods. Yeah. So talk to me about how you then went from Selfridges to Harrods.
So Harrods, I declined the interview, I think 3 times. And I must have had a bad day at Selfridges. Something must have happened because I actually went for the interview. And I wasn't sure I was the right fit for Harrods. I was this bubbly, loud northern girl who was super passionate about fashion, loved what she did. And I just thought, I'm probably not right for Harrods. And actually, I went there and I loved the people. I had some amazing conversations as part of my interview process. And I definitely knew after 5 years I needed a new challenge. So I went across the pond and I went to Harrods. And actually that move was the best move I ever made.
For what reason, would you say?
It's where I learned retail and service excellence. It's where I was exposed to so much and just given so many opportunities and watched so many incredible leaders, not just within Harrods, but also you're working with some of the world's biggest luxury brands that you also partner with. And I'm, pleased to say that a lot of them are still kind of friends of mine to this day. Building your network is a huge part of what we do. And I was exposed to so much. So I will always be grateful for my time at Harrods because I was just able to do what I wanted to do and take on bigger challenges, bigger remits, bigger projects in a very, global environment.
So in those early days, and I will still call your Harrods days your early days, how did you approach building relationships with both colleagues and clients? You mentioned obviously that, they have taken you to the next level and have been such a fundamental part of your career. But how did you go about doing that for somebody who perhaps is looking to get into this type of role now and will look at you for guidance, I guess, how would you say that shaped your understanding of the importance of great service and relationship building?
I think Harrods does very well and still does to this day. I stand by it. Harrods does sales and service excellence to a large group of people very well. So I think in Selfridges, I'd learned about personal shopping and those one-to-one experience and those celebrity and high-profile kind of clients. But in Harrods, you get to experience, yes, of course, you're part of some incredible brand partnerships where they host incredible events for their top percent of their clients. But also, they do that for the person who also comes in every day and buys a pint of milk. It's equally as important that they leave feeling a valued customer, and that is instilled in you. And I think it's a real fine art to do that, and Harrods is a service excellence. And the sales associates are at the heart of what they do, rightly so. They are the most important people in the business. They're the front line. They're the ones that hold the relationship with the client. And it's also the place where I fully understood CRM. I was there at the time of the launch of the rewards program, which was a game changer. Still there, still present to this day. So understanding how to use data to really understand your customer on a deeper level. So I think there was so much during those days. Also understanding retail theatre and creating a retail environment. I didn't really yes, Selfridges was an incredible kind of atmosphere, but I didn't realise until I went to Harrods how important it was to create an environment that was interesting to the client. Even then, 20 years ago, you were talking about it not just being about a product and it being about the whole experience, which has never been important more than it is today. So that's what I learned during those days.
I think it's so nice to hear that, actually, because like you just said, I mean, Harrods has the reputation, it's everything for everyone, and that slogan that they still live by. But, the thought of that, going into Harrods to buy a pint of milk and walking out and having that amazing experience, I think that's why it's so special. And I think people that go into Harrods now to work, I think perhaps don't really remember it or think of it in that way, which, it's nice to highlight that, really, because it is such a special place.
It's a really incredible place, and it's somewhere that people should, like I said, being able to, yes, okay, they've only got one door, as it were, so that they've got an opportunity of everybody in the company being in that building, but at the same time, it's really special that they get to create. They're very focused on service. I've never worked to this day in a business so focused on the customer and the team that deliver that. Like I said, the sales associate were the top of the hierarchy, and rightly so, and I live by that to today.
Oh, I'm so happy that you've said that, because I've had this conversation so many times and I feel like a broken record. And I think one of the reasons why the reason why we have this podcast is because I'm so obsessed with retail and people that work in retail, and how I believe that they should be celebrated so much more than what they are, because they are the window for the client to see into the brand and into the business, and they are the storytellers, and they are the reason why clients keep coming back and buying the product. And I think if they're not celebrated in that way, then they can often be made to feel as though they're at the bottom of the food chain, when actually I feel that they are the top. And I'm really passionate about that, and that's why I do the job that I do. And I'm so happy that you've mentioned that, because it sort of highlights, one of our key values, and I'm really happy you said it. But I guess the next thing that I want to go on to, really, is your career following Harrods. You spent 8 years there, you said, right? Yeah. So that's a long time.
It's a long time. I didn't think there was life after Harrods.
So what was the push?
Alexander McQueen was the push. So I was very fortunate that the CEO at the time, Jonathan Ackroyd, had previously worked in Harrods. So someone introduced me to him. And that is how I understood he was looking for a head of retail. And it was a new position. And then I messaged him. I went to meet with him. And obviously, as I said before, I did my dissertation on Lee McQueen, at this point, Lee had already passed away. Sarah Burton was at the helm. And I remember on my first day, Sarah was in the office and she'd just come back from maternity leave. And I was just like, if this is as good as it gets, I'm okay with this. So I took on the challenge of kind of scaling the MEA region. I think I had about 3 stores at the time. 3 years later, I had about 15 stores all around Europe. And I'd never run a region. I'd never worked in mono brands. So it was a huge challenge for me, actually, working in a head office team versus working in a region. But actually, the regional teams were your teams. I opened stores in Vienna, in Monaco. I opened their biggest ever store on Rue Saint-Honoré. And it was just a different experience for me. I needed to travel weekly, daily, all around Europe. You had to manage the head office expectations and you had to be part of the head office world, but actually you also needed to be on the ground with your team and really understand what they were experiencing too. And we were expanding in regions that we'd never been to before. I'll never forget going to Vienna, and we'd go and beforehand we'd go and headhunt the local talent, and there was no local talent in Vienna for luxury retail. Chanel was only just about to open, and some of the team, like one of the girls who turned out to be our top seller, we actually employed her from a hair salon.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it because you went in and got your hair done? How did you find her?
It's because we had, I always say this, whenever you're doing, expanding on a region, hire someone, like whether it's your store manager, regional manager, head of the region, director of the region, hire someone on the ground who knows people, because that always is the key to hiring the best talent. But yeah, there really was no luxury talent pool then, so it's really challenging. I'd have to go to Monaco on a weekend, and I know everyone's like, oh yeah, Monaco on a weekend,
how bad?
But we'd have to recruit a full team from store manager downwards. Well, by the time we left.
You didn't know me then, Claire. This is a problem. You didn't know me then. I would have found you people. We find needles in a haystack here. So that was obviously, I'm going to talk to you about challenges later on in this conversation, because I think it's something to focus on, because everybody in their career, especially being as intense as yours has been and how incredible it's been, there's obviously challenges that shape our career and shape us as individuals, because no matter what anybody says, what we do every day becomes a part of who we are. And that's why, both of us, when we first initially met, felt, we are, we're still shop girls. It's who we are. It's in our blood.
Shop girl.
But I want to go back because, there are building really strong sales teams and there's building sales teams. You just mentioned quite rightly about how difficult it has been, in certain areas of you building teams, where it's been challenging to find the right people. What do you think the key is in maintaining that really high focus sales team and delivering consistent service? So if you were to give advice to one of your new clients, for example, what would you say that is?
I think if it's different depending on environment versus online monobrand department store. I think if you're talking about scaling a region, it's the hardest because you have to create a new team, embed them into the other stores. And I really focused on kind of consistency. Consistency is key. You need a very clear roadmap of what the storytelling is, what the brand values are, what the customer journey is. And it has to be consistent. In Bottega Veneta, I was very fortunate. I had a big team to kind of help me execute that. In McQueen, it was just me. I was doing every part of the journey. I was the training director, I was the sales director, so I was the talent director. So I had to do a bit of everything. So really ensuring that what you're training is consistent from store to store, because if you've got customers are international, they travel the world. They might be in the Vegas store one day, they might be in the Mumbai store one day, they might be in your store one day, and they need to have the same incredible experience. And that, I think, is a really big challenge. Obviously, there's all the local nuances and the other challenges legally, locally that it brings. But actually, from the heart of being in terms of the customer and the salesperson, it's the consistency across all of those regions that's key.
It's a really, really interesting point, because I think process is a key word that's sort of going around in my head when you're saying that, because you speak to so many different people in various industries, and I think anything that has done well, whether it be a restaurant chain or various stores opening regionally or internationally or whatever, consistency across that is so important, as you just mentioned. And it is something that you will notice, and I think the listeners will now notice when you go to, I don't know, a Chanel store. I'm just saying that because that's where I come from. You go to a Chanel store in London, or you go to Paris, or you go somewhere else, it is consistent. The uniforms are the same, the way you're being served, the sort of service level, etc., is all very similar. So it's really important to highlight that, and that's obviously something that's that you now, I guess, consult on going forward.
We do a lot, and also I think what it's important to say is, yes, there's consistency, but you also need to empower your people to put their own personal flair on top of that, to make it unique to that salesperson. And that's a fine line to be able to do, but what you don't want is just a robotic process. You don't want to be just going around the world as a customer and getting the same robotic answers. You want to meet people who are genuinely, if you're a customer, you're passionate about that brand. So you want to meet people who are equally as passionate and highly educated about that brand, that can share with you insights that you didn't know and tell you something new, regardless which store you're in globally.
Absolutely. So going back onto that, right? So we're talking about people. Yep. I think, us being a recruitment agency, it's important to always talk about this in our conversations, but talent retention seems to be a challenge across the luxury retail sector. So in your opinion, what do brands need to be doing now? I mean, I have my own opinions, but, in your opinion, what do brands need to be doing differently to keep great people in place?
It's funny because we get asked by this now from our clients a lot. It's coming up more and more. And I honestly think this has been such a big shift. The generation has shifted. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in the industry to fully appreciate and understand that. What motivated me as an individual is very different than what motivates someone 20 years younger than me now. And I think brands need to really look at their employer branding and be able to attract that talent. They've got to start to make that shift mentally. And I'm not sure, I think some brands are a lot further on than others, but people want mission-led brands. They want to know what the brand stands for. They want to know what good it's doing. It's more than working for a brand. It's what's the impact it's having on the wider business and the wider world. It's the flexibility of working. People travel so much and want to be able to kind of have that flexibility. It's a big thing. So I think there's so many different aspects that brands need to kind of visit. Some are much further on than others, and I think that's down to people who have got very progressive chief people officers. But actually, some people are just stuck 20 years ago and trying to attract the new talent on the values that I maybe had. It's just not the same, and I can't see it moving backwards, only forwards. So I think we all need to accept there's a change in the market that needs to happen.
Yeah, totally. And it's something that, we come up against every single day, and still educating clients and trying to, understand, candidates now and how they're feeling about things and what makes them attracted to a particular business. And now, a lot of candidates are saying things along the lines of, talk to me about the brand sustainability approach and all of these things. So it's absolutely aligned with what you were saying, and something that I think you're absolutely right on. A lot of clients, of ours as well, are absolutely ahead of the game with it, and some have still got a lot of work to do. And I think if you want to attract the best people in the market, I think you really need to be in touch with the ground and what is happening. It's a really, really good point on that. I want to talk about, your personal journey now. And how it's been for you as Claire in the luxury retail world. And you shared obviously at the beginning that you went into this and you changed your mind about doing a degree and all of that. And I haven't got one either. And I think that, you know, you dived in at a young age to gain that experience, and you believe that it shaped you.
Yep.
How did that experience of hitting the ground running shape your leadership approach and, I guess, your wider career progression?
I think I was quite conscious of it at the beginning. And also, if you can't tell from my accent, I'm also from the north of England. So 20 years ago in luxury retail, I was kind of stereotyped quite a bit, which actually makes you quite self-conscious. But now I'm very proud of what I achieved. And you get to a point where you see enough in the industry to know, you know, what good looks like, and you know that you're actually delivering versus, you know, I've worked with some incredible, highly educated people. Yes, you need intelligence in business. Yes, you need to, in terms of a commercial acumen, the numbers, the data. A degree for me doesn't define my intelligence. So, but I do know now, and I learned quite early on, there's a secret sauce to being able to balance all of it. And
what is it?
I don't think anybody really know. You've got to have the passion. You've got to have the commercial acumen. You've got to be curious. You've got to want to, you know, be good with numbers and data in my world, for sure. And I've always loved numbers. I was always, you know, maths was always a thing. So,
oh, no, not me.
But also, maths was a thing, but also, so was art. So I kind of had the balance of both worlds. So there's a secret sauce to it. And it's those leaders with that secret mix. I say secret, but the mix that makes a leader, and actually someone who has got empathy and understands what it takes to lead a team. Because I think leading yourself is one thing, and getting yourself through a challenge and getting yourself to that milestone is absolutely, you know, one challenge in itself. Getting you and 100 other people across that line is a totally different experience.
Talking about challenges, I mean, every successful career and every, you know, podcast that you might listen to, you know, when people are talking about their career, especially those that have been very successful, have had its obstacles.
Yep.
So what would you say your biggest challenge has been in your career, and how did you then overcome that?
I thought about this a lot, and I don't think there's one challenge that I think, I think because I started at such a young age in such global, well-known businesses, I was challenged to so much so quickly. And I think doing big projects, for sure, really kind of cements certain things. You learn the art of resilience and composure. I think one of Harrods' key competencies to be successful at Harrods was resilient. I realise I'm super resilient. To this day, I am a really resilient person. And I understood the importance of that, because what makes you different to people who aren't as resilient is you do want to give up sometimes. It is challenging. Business is tough. Managing sales teams, but delivering sales numbers is very stressful. And you are under the spotlight from the whole of the business, because for the business to be successful, you need to deliver those numbers. Yeah. So you do need to be resilient. And I was a kind of leader of creating the Harrods Toy Kingdom, which was 26,000 square foot at the time. And it was a huge project and a very expensive project, but I also had a team and a business to run. And I was a fashion girl. I'd never run a toy kingdom in my life. So it's projects like that. It's like, I remember doing huge high profile events in Bottega Veneta, opening, you know, the Paris flagship in McQueen. All those events shape you, and you learn from those challenges. You also learn, and this sounds super cliche, but you just got to sit through the uncomfortable. I think at first I was just like, oh my God, this is uncomfortable. I need to move past it. But sometimes you just have to keep, you know, you have to stay in that moment to get through to the other side. And if you can do that and you remain composed throughout it, you know, your team will always look at you. They won't panic if you're not panicking. Yeah. I'm a true believer of that.
But was there ever a time where you doubted yourself?
All the time.
Was there one particular time that you remember particularly and you thought, oh, I don't know if this is for me anymore?
While I was in Harrods, I decided that I didn't know anything different other than retail, and maybe there was a world of something else that was for me. And Harrods supported that, and I was lucky enough to be given a role in HR. And I had a great boss at the time, who's still the Chief People Officer now, Abby Weeks, and I took on a HR role. And at that point, I loved what I did. I was learning, but it was completely, being at a desk, being in an office environment was completely different to what I knew. And actually, it turned out to be one of the best things I did in terms of upskilling myself in terms of people management, dealing with people conflict. It wasn't dealing with talent mapping, all of those kind of mobility, succession planning. I learned so much, but at the time when I was in it, it was super challenging. And I was just like, maybe this isn't for me. And I did end up going back to the shop floor, but it wasn't because I was just like defeated by it. I'm quite a driven person, so I kind of stuck with it. And I'm really glad I did.
How long did you do that for before you decided to go back?
About 2.5 years.
That's a long time.
And the only reason I didn't stick with it is because I didn't want to look after the engineers and the plumbers of Harrods. And, my position was in fashion.
Yeah.
And as long as it was HR fashion, I was fine. But HR for, the bakery, I wasn't as passionate about.
How did the Bottega Veneta role come about then from Harrods?
Well, I went to Alexander McQueen first, so I was in caring.
Oh, fine, yes.
And
so was that an internal then?
I was approached about a year before by Bottega Veneta, and if you were internal in caring, you had to divulge it. And I went to tell my CEO at the time, and I bottles it basically. I sat there with him, had my one-to-one, and I still had a huge project in Paris to do. I wanted to open, it was the biggest store McQueen had ever opened, It was like the Paris flagship. We showed our collection in Paris. It was such a key event that I wanted to do that anyway. So it just wasn't for me at the time. And about a year later, the role came up as being general manager for the UK. And I decided that now was the right time. So I went off and told my CEO, and, I was thankful I got the position, because if I didn't, I don't know if it had been the same story. But the drive for me to Bottega, it was still in the Thomas Meyer days. It was kind of the end of the Thomas Meyer era. But the drive for me through Bottega was the height of luxury. For me, within the caring portfolio, it wasn't really the performance of the brand. It was the craftsmanship. It was the storytelling. I just loved it. And I still do. I'm still a big Bottega fan, a big Bottega customer. I think what they have got as a brand is long lasting and incredible.
So at the end of that, what happened? Why did you make the decision to walk away from a brand that you were so passionate about?
So I wasn't going to walk away at all. I was 6 months into Daniel Lee, had just arrived. I remember the CEO at the time called me and said, Claire, I said, Mr. Lars, congratulations, on appointing Daniel Lee. He said, oh, you've got a friend in the company, because he was actually the only other person from the north of England. So we were from similar places. So whenever you ever used to go to Milan and his team would hear, or he'd hear my voice, they'd all be like, who's that? So I was very much, it was my aesthetic. I was just like, this is what I've waited for. And I got approached about the Farfetch job. And online, yes, was a thing, but it wasn't as big as it then got. And I wasn't totally convinced it was for me. But after 6 months, I was then approached again about the role. And I said, a recruiter I knew very well was there working for Farfetch, so I went to meet with her. And actually, I was just super intrigued, and I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, what they're doing is amazing. It was a global role in London, which as we all know, in luxury retail, don't come up as often. I'd kind of explored in Bottega Veneta about maybe going to the US, maybe going to Asia. I needed something new and something different. And actually Farfetch was going to do that, or it ticked a lot of the boxes of what I was looking for in my next challenge. So I would have happily stayed at Bottega for the Daniel Lee era. You know, I feel like I was made for that era. And actually, as the project hit the floor, it was when I left and went to Farfetch.
So going back to you personally, okay, you speak about all these people, and obviously before we sat down and started recording, we realised that we know so many people in common. Were there any particular people in your career that you would say or class as true mentors, or people that help guide you along the way, that you're still either in touch with or look up to?
I aren't just saying this, but I've had so many leaders in 25 years, but two, because of where I've worked and the brands I've worked for, I've met some incredibly talented leaders, and all for different reasons. I've learned leadership of what I love and what I don't love as well. But every leader I've had has brought something different to me. And when I often ask people how they like to be led, just because I think it's quite a unique, a personal thing to you, of what works for one person in leadership doesn't work for the other in terms of style. And my career has been built up, and my leadership style is because I've witnessed various people. So I've had, I wouldn't call them necessarily mentors, just people, you know, in caring. I worked for Simone Dominici, Andrea Cortini, Mr. Lars. Yeah, I've worked for a lot of people, but I remember when I went to Harrods, within 6 months I was put on the Advanced Harrods Management Programme, I think it was called at the time, and Suzanne Taufreiter was assigned to me as my mentor, and she was like I adored Suzanne Taufreiter and still do, and I was blown away that she was going to be my mentor. I'd been in Selfridges for 5 years, so I knew her work. She was such a visionary of the retail landscape. And so one of my first ever official mentors was her. And I was just like, and I remember telling her the story, but then fast forward probably another 15 years later, I sit down with her at Farfetch as the global sales director of private client, and she was there as well. And I was telling her the stories, and, you know, we both share an absolute passion and love for retail. Also, I think, you know, Abby Weeks had a big piece to play for me, because when I did go to HR, and like I said, I did think, is this for me? Should I stay? But actually, through her guidance and through her taking me out of my comfort zone and really pushing me, which at the time I probably didn't appreciate, but I should have. But she really guided me through my time at HR, which actually retained me in the company. And I went on to do, you know, the Toy Kingdom. I went on to run beauty afterwards. So I'm always very grateful to her as well for really sticking with me. Because I wasn't a HR trained professional, but I knew leadership and I knew sales and I knew retail very well from coming from the shop floor. So yeah, there's a lot of people. One senior leader, actually, there's one quote that will always stay with me: focus on what you can affect. And I don't know why, but that in many situations since then has always rings in my ears, because I think sometimes in sales, when you've got big numbers to hit and everybody's kind of like strategizing and thinking what to do next, and in some cases just panicking, that you focus on things that you have no control over. And when you run large teams, everybody can get clouded judgment by things they've got zero control. And I think I always go back to that and take it back to my team and say, what can we affect in this? And let's focus on that.
I love that. I'm going to use that now from now on. I mean, I think of things, you know, very similar to those words, but in a different way. But that's something that I'm definitely going to use. So I'm going to remember this conversation for that one quote, because
it's probably stayed with me for about 20 years.
It's
and
absolutely
for some
amazing.
reason, it's something so simple, but at times of managing big projects or big teams or big regions and needing to deliver some pretty big numbers, I remember that, like, let's refocus. What is it within our remit that we can affect? And let's focus on that and do the best we can with that, rather than wasting time and energy and effort on things that we just have no control about. And as you know, in our industry, there's a lot of things we just have no control about.
I know. I say this a lot. And, you know, I say this to all my clients when I go into meetings. I say, look, there are certain things that I can't control, so I try not to worry about that. But the things I can control, I control them. So, you know, that is a really, really amazing quote, and something that I'm going to use, you know, going forward, especially in my business. Looking back on your career, has your definition of success evolved over time? And how do you define success now?
This is my favourite question, because it is literally night and day of what I used to define success to what I do now. Before, it was about the job title, it was about the salary, it was about what I was going to do, it was about how big a number was I going to deliver, all of those things. Now it's completely different. I want to know how I'm going to get there, who I'm going to get there with is far more important. Can I help people get to that milestone? It's completely different success. I actually am a point in my career, I don't care about my title. I'm just there through my passion of wanting to support and help business and people and coach them on what I've learned and get them to the stages and the milestones they want to achieve. So I think out of everything, my definition of success is completely different to what it was. Completely. I presumed when I first became a leader that everybody was driven. Everyone wanted to be a CEO. Everyone wanted a big title. Everyone wanted the next step, and everyone wanted it very quickly. I now know that is not the case for everybody. And I learned it the hard way, you know. Some people just love what they do and do it incredibly well and are happy doing that. And it's your job to keep them retained and motivated and engaged.
Especially in the role that they're actually doing.
Exactly. And I was always there pushing people like, let's go here. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And some people, I was surprised when I got resistance sometimes. I couldn't work it out. It's just like, well, of course you want to be promoted. But actually not everybody does. And that's okay, because some people are just so incredible at what they do and happy doing what they're doing.
Yeah. And I speak to people regularly, obviously interviewing them, and there are some phenomenal salespeople, for example, that think that being a manager is going to define them as being super successful. So it's really actually intriguing what you just said, because it validates, you know, my thought process on a daily basis. And it's not always the case. You know, you can be a phenomenal salespeople and a salesperson, and grow in that area of a business, and it doesn't affect your ability to earn more or to become, you know, more recognised, etc. But a lot of people think that being a manager is the most important thing or the biggest role that you can have in retail, and it's not actually the case. So it's really, really good that, you know, somebody that's built a career the way you have highlighted that, because I think people that are listening to this will really start to think differently about progression in their own career in this industry.
I think there's a whole podcast on that alone.
Yeah.
I think out of if someone was to ask me, what conversation have you had the most in your whole career as a sales director, chief people officer? That is a conversation I've had the most. Being a manager isn't for everybody, and it's not the definition of success. You can be, and I think the industry's a lot more aligned with sideward steps and moving up in a different way rather than just having a manager title.
Yeah.
Only do it if that's what your skill set is and that's what you want to achieve, not because you feel society or the business or the brand you work for expects you to do it, because actually if it's not for you, it's not for you, and that is also absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's so interesting. My last point on this actually is a particular company that recognise amazing salespeople and promote them into managerial roles. Even though they're fantastic at selling and being with the clients, and actually taking them away from that, I think is ludicrous, because they need to be selling to the clients. So that was something that came up this week, funnily enough, and I just thought, wow, you know, that isn't the right strategy, because if you've got a phenomenal salesperson and they actually enjoy selling, why would you take them away from that to give them more admin work?
Retain, motivate, inspire. That's what you need to do with that person.
Absolutely.
If that's what they want, obviously.
So if you could go back in time, I mean, I know I would do. No, if we could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self when you first started in luxury retail, and what would that be?
Probably to be, now for people who know me, I am quite, honest and open, but actually to be a bit more outspoken and to be a bit braver in my decisions. I was like, I didn't know what I know now. And if I did, I would have pushed a lot harder for some. I realised what I was talking about was the right thing, was made sense. So just to give me that more confidence in what I was doing, is what I would say. Don't be afraid. And also, I think at the beginning, you're so worried about making mistakes. And then you realise mistakes are all part of the learning process. And as long as you learn from them, but you're so worried about it that you overanalyze the whole situation. So just to be a bit braver and a bit bolder.
Well, it's really good advice, because I think now the generation coming up have got more confidence. I think we did at our time, because we were like, petrified of everything. But it's really, really good advice. And I think if you can, have that conversation internally to think, right, I have got the confidence to say what I feel, and I believe in something, to go out there and say it. So it's really, really great advice. So, Claire, after such a successful career, what made you decide to start your consultancy, Atelier?
So this Atelier Consultancy has probably been a couple of years in the making. So I'm very fortunate to have a very good friend of mine who has a very similar background. We met in Harrods whilst in HR. That's how we met and became very good friends. And we've talked about it often, but kind of she was on her career path, I was on mine. Actually, a lot of people have suggested it to us once they realise we know each other and we're very close. And then the stars aligned, and we were actually both in a position last year where we could commit to a time to get the business up and running. So we want to do it because Sabrina's like me. We're at a certain point in our careers where we enjoy using our skills to guide, to support, to advise others on things we've experienced on vast and small scale. And that's what we wanted to do. And we wanted to challenge ourselves. I think once you get to a certain point, the challenges aren't, you're used to dealing with them. So they're not as, we wanted to challenge ourselves in a different way. As you will know, running your own business brings many obstacles and many different challenges that you didn't even know existed. And that's what we wanted to do. So that was how it was born last year, really. And we both have really appreciate. We say we've got the best of both worlds, but it's actually we've got the best of many worlds. We've got the ability to use our skill sets. We still see the people within our network. We've got the ability to work with larger brands, but we really enjoy working with kind of smaller and maybe mid-sized brands that are looking to scale or in the process of getting funded. So we really enjoy what we're doing, and we're very fortunate to be given the opportunity to do so.
I think it's amazing what you've done. And I guess then the next question, based on what you've just said, because you're working with so many different, types of brands, what do you think some of the biggest challenges luxury brands are facing today?
I think the luxury slowdown is obviously at the heart of everybody's minds. Everybody's re-looking at what they do from a product, people, customer. It's a challenging time. It's tough out there. Like, business is tougher, and therefore never has it been more important than to retain your current client base. Yes, and attract new clients. So a lot of our clients are coming to us about client retention, client strategies, customer journey, especially about the VIP kind of client base and client segment. And within that, we're naturally leading on, and this has happened with a couple of our brands. You then talk about talent retention, your people as well, because if these people have got at the front line and got those deep relationships with the clients you're trying to retain, they both come hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So we're talking a lot about that. Also, there's a lot of kind of project work about pop-ups as well, we're looking to expand with certain clients in the US and in the Middle East, but we're firm believers during times like this, pop-ups are a great way of testing and learning in a region that are cost effective, that you can really get some key data points and insights. So a lot of people are also coming to us regarding pop-ups globally, really, about what's the best go-to-market strategy, and also just where's the right opportunity for them depending on their business and what they want to scale.
Oh, it's amazing. I love a pop-up, you know, and I think now,
Big fan.
yeah, massive. I mean, we love staffing them. We love those projects, but we've seen a massive push on that now, especially for experiential marketing as well, and how amazing these pop-ups can be for so many different brands, and it attracts all different types of clients as well, and introduces new clients to businesses, and we see that regularly. So it's really interesting to see that that's something that you're pushing as well within your business. So to wrap things up, really, I've got a few sort of last questions. And what would be a key piece of advice that you would give somebody that perhaps is thinking about starting a career in luxury retail, or is at the early stages of their career in luxury retail and wants to develop to a stage where you are now?
I think you've got to be able to, you've got to put in the hard work. It's hard. It's a hard industry to be in. It's super rewarding. You will learn so much. You have to be curious. And actually, one bit of advice I really would give is when you're given a role, be curious about the whole business. And sometimes I look back and think, oh my God, I was exposed to this, but I could have also learned about this. You know, when I think back about McQueen, I could have really exposed myself a bit, and Harrods, a bit more about e-commerce and what was happening in there. And yes, I then got my opportunity in Farfetch, but just try and explore as much as you can without past your remit, because you'll never know when you need it, or what that experience, you might gain a different insight. You might actually realize that you're really good at something else as well. And then network, personal branding. I, to this day, have very close relationships and friendships of people I've worked with and been in contact with. The other day I had to contact someone that I haven't been in contact with over 20 years, but I was still able to write the email and say, hey, you know, it's me, let's connect again. So I think personal branding, always be mindful of that. You might just think, oh, I'll never see this person again. You'll be surprised and amazed where in your career that person will emerge from.
Especially in this industry. It's extremely small.
Everybody thinks it's this huge, global, multi-billion industry, which it is, but it's also incredibly small. Everybody knows everybody. Be very aware of your personal brand. Be clear from the offset what it is you want to be known for and why you want to be known for that, and make sure you have lasting relationships, because your network is probably the most valuable thing to you.
Absolutely. Well, your network's your net worth is the saying that's been going on for years, right? So that's really important. So what's next for you in terms of yourself, your consultancy? What's next? Any big projects, anything that's really exciting that you'd like to share?
Well, this is our first year of our full first year in consultancy. So we're currently kind of in some really exciting talks with various kind of brands, and we've got some exciting projects coming up. But really, it's about cementing the foundations of our consultancy this year. We're excited about kind of onboarding new clients, and what we're really excited about is the mix of clients. Like I said, we've got some kind of brands that are just starting out, some mid-level brands, but also some super experienced brands. And we're helping them on so many different things. So I think we're just excited about the whole kind of landscape of what we get to delve into each day, really, and each week. You know, this is what we want to do. We don't just want to help large-scale brands, and we don't just want to help startups either. We're really fortunate that because of our network, we've been able to kind of cultivate a client base of various different kind of profiles. Also, we like to expand beyond luxury, and that's what we're really excited about for this year. Is we don't just want to do luxury fashion. We're talking to people in hospitality, in wellness, in lifestyle. We're passionate about luxury beyond fashion, and the client is the same client, and it's the same experience beyond just fashion. So that's probably what we're most excited about.
Well, watch this space then.
Exactly.
I'm so excited for everything that you're about to do, and I wish you all the success. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to come and have this conversation with me, and I got to learn everything I wanted to know about you. So thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.